countrywide network promised to revolutionize Australia's digital future. Instead, it became one of the most expensive infrastructure failures in history. The National Broadband Network, or NBN, was supposed to deliver world-class fiber-optic internet to every Australian home. What they got instead was a Frankenstein mix of outdated copper cables, expensive delays, and internet speeds slower than Romania. How did Australia spend $51 billion and end up with third-world internet? Let's break it down. In 2009, Australia had a problem. The country's internet infrastructure was aging, slow, and falling dangerously behind the rest of the developed world, while South Korea and Japan were racing ahead with lightning-fast fiber connections. Australians were stuck with copper phone lines from the 1950s trying to deliver 21st century internet. Something had to change. Enter the National Broadband Network. Announced by Prime Minister Kevin Rudd in 2009, the NBN was supposed to be Australia's digital revolution. The vision was bold. Fiber-optic cables running directly to 93% of Australian homes and businesses, delivering internet speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second. The remaining 7% in remote areas would get high-speed wireless or satellite connections. This wasn't just an upgrade, it was a complete transformation of Australia's telecommunications infrastructure. Here's where things get interesting. The NBN wasn't merely another infrastructure project. It was supposed to position Australia as a global digital leader. The ambition was clear. Australia would leapfrog its competitors and become one of the most connected nations on Earth. The NBN would deliver consistent speeds of 100 megabits per second to nearly every household, with the capacity to scale up to 1 gigabit per second as demand grew. The initial budget was set at $37.4 billion, with completion targeted for 2016. It was a blueprint for Australia's digital future. Yet even the best-laid plans can go horribly wrong. What happened next turned a nation-building project into an international embarrassment. So how did it all fall apart? We need to go back to 2013. Construction for the NBN began with high hopes under the Labor government's fiber-to-the-premises model, known as FTTP. This meant pure fiber-optic cables running all the way to people's homes, the gold standard of internet infrastructure. But those hopes didn't last long. What went wrong? In September 2013, Australia held a federal election. The Liberal National Coalition won, and they had very different ideas about the NBN. The new government, led by Prime Minister Tony Abbott, immediately declared the Labor plan too expensive and too slow to build. Their solution? Scrap the fiber-to-the-home model and replace it with what they called the multi-technology mix, or MTM. Here's what that actually meant. Instead of running new fiber cables to every home, the coalition decided to use whatever infrastructure already existed. Old copper phone lines from the 1990s? Use those. The plan was to run fiber to neighborhood nodes, then connect homes using the existing copper network. They called it fiber to the node, or FTTN. The initial optimism soon crumbled under the weight of mounting issues. Delay after delay piled up, each one exposing deeper cracks in the network's foundation. The promised completion date of 2016 came and went, then 2018, then 2020. For nearly a decade, Australians watched as the NBN stumbled from one disaster to another. Billions of dollars were funneled into a network that stubbornly refused to deliver on its promises. What did people see instead? Internet speeds that were slower than what many already had, dropouts during video calls, buffering during streaming, and a global spectacle of a first-world nation with third-world internet infrastructure. So, was the project doomed from the very beginning? The NBN's revised design was riddled with issues. One of the biggest setbacks came from the decision to reuse old copper cables. These cables, some over 30 years old, were never designed to carry high-speed internet data. What went wrong here? Copper degrades over time. Moisture, corrosion, and physical damage had left many of these cables in terrible condition. NBN technicians discovered that huge sections of the copper network were completely unusable and had to be replaced anyway, defeating the entire purpose of the cheaper MTM model. But the copper cables were only the beginning. The fiber-to-the-node technology had a fatal flaw: distance. The further a home was from the node, the slower the internet speed. Some Australians living just 500 meters from a node were getting speeds of less than 25 megabits per second, barely better than old ADSL connections. Can you imagine the scope of that error? The government had promised faster internet for all, but millions of Australians were getting connections that were barely functional. In some areas, people were paying for NBN plans advertising 100 megabits per second but receiving less than 10. Beyond the physical construction flaws, management struggled with a lack of coordination among contractors and project leaders. Miscommunication between stakeholders meant problems often went unaddressed until they escalated into major issues. And then there was the financial mismanagement, which only compounded the disaster. The NBN became known as a money pit. Its costs soared, eventually totaling more than $51 billion, an amount that dwarfed its original $37.4 billion estimate. Here's the truly shocking part. Despite spending billions more than originally planned, Australia ended up with a network that was technically inferior to what they would have gotten with the original fiber plan. Studies showed that completing the full fiber-to-the-premises network would have cost roughly the same amount, but would have delivered vastly superior speeds and reliability for decades to come. Can you fathom the scale of that? Australia spent more money to build a worse network. What was intended as the showcase of Australia's commitment to the digital age turned into an international embarrassment. Australia's reputation for innovation and forward-thinking infrastructure was deeply shaken. For many, the NBN failure shattered the illusion of efficient government project management. Instead of representing Australian excellence, the network became a glaring example of what can go wrong when political ideology trumps technical expertise. But what about Australia's digital economy itself? The country's tech sector, which had been relying on the success of the NBN to transform Australia into a competitive digital hub, found itself severely hampered. Startups couldn't access the bandwidth they needed. Remote workers faced constant connection issues. As other countries raced ahead with fiber infrastructure, Australia fell further and further behind. After years of delays and mounting criticism, the NBN was finally declared complete in 2020. But what was meant to be a grand symbol of Australia's technological progress fell short of expectations. By 2020, the original fiber-to-the-premises network would have been perfectly positioned to handle the massive surge in internet usage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, the NBN's patchwork of technologies struggled to cope. During lockdowns, when millions of Australians tried to work and study from home simultaneously, the network groaned under the pressure. Video calls dropped. Remote learning platforms crashed. Parents working from home competed with their children for bandwidth just to attend basic Zoom meetings. The very moment when Australia needed world-class internet infrastructure the most, the NBN revealed its fundamental inadequacies. And the numbers tell the story. In 2013, when the original NBN plan was scrapped, Australia ranked 31st in the world for internet speeds. By 2020, after spending $51 billion, Australia had fallen to 59th place. Countries like Thailand, Romania, and Hungary all had faster internet than Australia. Let that sink in for a moment. Even after finally being completed, the NBN's journey was not the victory Australia had hoped for. The network that was once meant to be a source of national pride felt like a relic of a missed opportunity, ill-suited for the transformed digital landscape of the 2020s. The NBN is a prime example of how political interference, poor planning, and lack of technical expertise can derail even the most promising ventures. A key issue was the decision to abandon the original fiber plan for short-term political gain. Leaders prioritized cheaper upfront costs over long-term value, leading to a network that cost more and delivered less. So what does the NBN story teach us? The importance of sticking with proven technology, resisting political pressure to cut corners, and understanding that infrastructure projects must be built for the future, not just the present. And most importantly, never underestimate the cost of choosing the cheap option. It might just be the difference between a monumental success and a $51 billion failure. Though the NBN eventually launched, its journey remains a warning. Political short-sightedness and penny-pinching can turn a visionary project into a costly burden that Australia will be dealing with for decades to come. And if you think this was a disaster, wait until you see what happened in Germany. A brand new airport that took almost a decade longer than planned, cost 4 times its original budget, and opened with outdated systems and missing safety features. Fire systems that didn't work, cables installed incorrectly, and over 120,000 defects turned the project into a global embarrassment. Want to know how a simple airport became an $8 billion failure? Check out our deep dive into Berlin-Brandenburg Airport, the project that shattered Germany's engineering reputation.